Hi, and welcome to BNEWS In Depth. I'm your host, Sydney Boles. It was last year that Burlington released its Housing Needs Assessment, a mammoth report meant to help the town learn its challenges and opportunities in the world of housing. The results were missing a lot of it. Condos, apartments, and most notably, affordable housing. Thousands of units of it. But what's happened since the report came out? How have our elected officials responded to the information? To figure it out, I sat down with 3 people who were involved in creating the report. Mike Runyan is the chair of the Burlington Select Board. Liz Bonventre is Burlington's Planning Director. And Rita Shah is the founder of FISCO, Friends of the Indian Senior Citizen Organization. Mike and Rita were both on the Burlington Housing Partnership Committee, which helped produce the report. We dove into the next steps the town can and should take to solve the problem, but we started with the report itself. Mike, Rita, Liz, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So I want to start back before this report came out, the inception of it. So Mike, why did Burlington set out to create this document?
Well, I think everyone knows that housing is expensive here in Burlington. I think everyone knows that we have inadequate supply of senior housing in town, but we've never got confirmation on that. We've never done a comprehensive study, and we felt that it was important that we have this data so that we can, instead of speculating on what we might need, now we have a document that gives us some direction as to where we should be, focusing our attention and resources. Now we have that.
You're the chair of the select board here in town.
Right.
It's a powerful position with a lot of different areas that you are sort of like have a hand in. Where does housing rank in terms of the priorities of your tenure on the select board?
Very low.
Not what I expected you to say.
There's really very little interest amongst the select board. It's not something we typically get into. It's typically something that's handled through the planning department. But being involved in housing for 30 years or so, I sort of taken the lead on it from the select board standpoint, and I'm trying to get some support within that group.
Maybe we'll come back to that later.
Yeah.
See what's going on in that regard. But Liz, as the planning director, what's the value for you in having a report like this made?
So from the planning perspective, I think it's really important. I think we should always base our planning and zoning decisions on hard data, not just on kind of gut feelings. And I feel like what this report told us wasn't anything that I didn't know or we didn't kind of have a sense of, like in the planning office, but it's really good to have hard data that we can go to town meeting and say, here's the data, here's options for what we can do with that data and what we should be doing and how we want to move the community forward. From a planning perspective and the planning board, only kind of permits multifamily housing, and right now we don't have any areas of multifamily that are allowed to be built. So that kind of falls with the town meeting. But I think that, there's some good recommendations of kind of next steps in the report. There's housing policy coming out of the state that we need to be cognizant of. So, I think that's kind of where we're at. But I'm always looking ahead, thinking about the next 30 years, thinking about, holistically, and not just Burlington, but think regionally as well. What do we need? Right?
Absolutely. And Rita, for you, what made you want to get involved with this project in the Housing Partnership Committee?
So by profession, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So just being in social work industry, I've seen the families who can't afford the housing. And I was working with the Housing Corporation of Arlington. They did affordable housing for about 8 years. And I can see There's so much funding available from federal, state, and different other groups where we can build affordable housing and provide housing for every single residents of the town, because sometimes people have to put the housing before the food and other basic needs, and that really makes me sad that we should, being the richest state in the country, second richest state, whatever you call, we should be able to provide basic shelter, food and clothing for our residents.
What are some of the stories that you hear from people who are involved in FSCO in your community about what it feels like, what it looks like for people?
So I do hear from many of my seniors in the town that they have these big houses that they would love to sell and open up for the families, and then downsize to 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, or 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom, where they can live affordably, because right now it's hard for them to manage those big houses with all the work that goes around it, as well as taking care of it, maintenance and all that. So this is what I hear from all of my seniors, and that's what I would love to see town take some kind of project in hand to build the housing, because that is top priority from the community that I serve.
And what about you, Mike? I feel like in the process of making this report, there were focus groups, there were interviews, there were surveys done. What did you hear from residents about what it feels like?
I think Rita sort of summed it up pretty well. We've talked to a lot of seniors, a lot of people. They want to stay in Burlington. All of their friends, their family, their doctors, their everything, all of their connections are here in Burlington, but they're finding it more and more difficult to maintain the large single-family home, and they would like nothing better than to downsize but remain in Burlington, and we're finding it very difficult to do so.
And I think, Liz, there's also this piece of it where I think of things from a younger person's perspective. In my 30s, I feel like the opportunities to build a life, to buy a home, are really different than they were a number of years ago, and that has implications for who can afford to live here.
I 100% agree with you. I think what the higher arching kind of concept that we're all talking about between seniors, young families, kids out of college, renters, is the fact that, the life cycle of housing is broken in the state of Massachusetts. We're kind of at an impasse. People can't move forward. There's no places for seniors to downsize. There's no places for people who have their first job and are kind of looking to get their first house. Everybody is kind of at a standstill because there isn't enough housing in the entire region. And so it all comes down to the fact that there isn't enough supply and the demand is high. What I think is different now than I would say 30 years ago is that the household size is smaller. People aren't having, 4 kids in a 3-bedroom split level house. Everybody household sizes are smaller. So you need more units of housing for a smaller group of people.
Right, we don't have as many people who want that 4-bedroom house for their 3 kids, and
even if they have it, they don't have anywhere to go. Again, the cycle is broken. When you're ready to move to another stage in your life, you can't. There's no place for you to go, and so that's kind of the issue.
So you all have touched on pieces of the data in this report, and I'm so excited to get into it. The first thing I want to do is I actually want to play a video that was produced as part of this report. I think it'll give us a good baseline, and then we can sort of dive deeper into what some of these numbers say. So I'm going to turn to the control room. Can you guys get that video going for us?
In Burlington, like many places in Massachusetts and around the country, it can be hard to find an affordable place to live. Rents and home prices are through the roof. To learn more about our town's housing challenges, the Burlington Housing Partnership Committee worked with MAPC to examine data about our housing and demographics, and also listened to the concerns of residents. The final result is a comprehensive housing needs assessment, and there are 5 key findings in the report. First, Burlington needs a greater variety of housing types. Nearly 2/3 of our town's housing stock is detached single-family homes, which tend to be both large and expensive. Smaller homes like townhouses, duplexes, and small multifamily buildings designed to blend into the town's existing character would make homeownership possible for young professionals, small households, and seniors looking to downsize. Since single-family homes make up most of Burlington's current housing stock, it's very difficult to buy a home in town. Today, someone would need nearly $140,000 in savings just for the down payment. And with rents through the roof as well, saving this much money is virtually impossible for many young families. By creating more housing options and expanding homeownership in Burlington, we can also become a more inclusive and equitable community, which is something that many of the residents in our focus groups and online survey told us is very important to them. And while creating different types of housing will expand what's known as lowercase a affordable housing, that is, housing that is affordable to median income residents, Burlington also needs more of what's known as capital A affordable housing, that is, deed-restricted housing that is affordable to our lowest income residents, including seniors. For every 5 eligible households, the town currently has only 1 affordable housing unit. Without more housing options and capital A affordable housing, the Burlington community could change dramatically in the coming years. We could lose our seniors, our teachers, essential workers, and all the people who make our town vibrant and diverse.
Putting myself through school so I can hopefully afford it someday, even looking at what I would make as a nurse, I would still have to work very hard to try and stay in this community, which I just find it a little unfair because I've grown up here, my daughter's growing up here, and I shouldn't be pushed away.
Our town is not unique in facing these housing challenges, but if we take action, we can work to make Burlington's housing more inclusive and meet the needs of both current and future residents. Visit the Burlington Housing Needs Assessment website to read the full report and learn what our town can do to address these challenges.
There's a lot in there. Rita, what's the feeling watching it all, seeing it all laid out that way, kind of starkly?
I just feel so sad that we are not able to take care of it right now. It is really urgent, needed by town committee members, the selectmen, to act on it. This is very important report, and we have worked very hard to get this report together by having a focus group, having all the residents questioning and getting answers from them. So we really need to do whatever is needed as soon as possible to get bylaws changed, whatever is changed, to add a in-laws unit or multi-family unit. Anything is needed to get this affordable housing for our essential workers. Because I truly feel that the police, fire, the teachers, all of them need affordable housing if we want to have a good teachers, good people helping us run this town.
Okay, let's dig into some of these numbers. We're gonna get a little wonky in here.
Yeah.
So, okay, one of the numbers in the report: 1 in 4 households in Burlington is cost burdened, and for those who may not know, that means that you're paying at least 30% of your income in rent. Mike, what does it mean? What's the consequences when a quarter of our population is in that situation?
Well, it's not good. It's always been a long-standing policy that if you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing, you're going to find yourself in some difficult times. We've got people that are paying upwards of 50%, and in some cases even more, just for their housing needs. Truly problematic. And from an economic development standpoint, if we need to be able to house these people that come here and sustain our economy here in Burlington. Leahy Clinic's a great example. Okay, they're a teaching hospital. They have a lot of interns that come here. They do their internship, and as soon as they're done, they leave. And the number one reason they leave is they're looking for more affordable housing. They're going to different parts of the country to find it. They're not finding it here. And if we don't do something, we're gonna lose that important piece of Burlington that makes Burlington what it is our strong economic base that we have here. So several reasons for us to take housing seriously.
We could have a genuine brain drain, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Potentially.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the findings in the report was the housing that we have right now is 65% detached family units. That's your single family home. 16% multifamily, so that's big, like 20 plus unit sort of apartment kind of complexes. And then 19% is what we call missing middle, is what was found in the report. Can you explain what missing middle is a little bit?
Sure. So this is a really big kind of planning concept and housing concept is that the idea that it's infill housing. It's housing that is townhomes and duplexes and accessory dwelling units, in-law apartments and fourplexes. I mean, I know that triple deckers are middle housing. And so, it's providing that smaller scale housing that maybe would fit in more with a detached housing area.
Fit in aesthetically.
Fit in aesthetically, you wouldn't really notice it, but it's kind of that middle housing that we're really missing.
I mean, it's remarkable that the term itself implies its absence.
Yeah.
How did we get here? And any of you can jump in on this. How did we find ourselves in a situation where a kind of housing, the name for it, is literally describing the fact that we don't have it?
I think NIMBY describes it best.
Yeah.
Not in my backyard.
Correct.
And that's
Correct. People don't want it. They don't want to see a two-family home built on their street. They don't want a small multifamily development in their neighborhood. They prefer that those be built, on the outskirts of town or in the industrial area or a town like that. But not always necessarily attractive to particularly our seniors.
So on that note, one of yesterday's Boston Globe talked about it. There's a lot of elders out there who are homeless, who can't take care of themselves. So I think this really brings up the point that for elders who, as they get elder, they need more help. And if we have an in-laws unit or like two families, then on one side the families can live in, take care of the elders, and that way they can maintain the property and we won't have to worry about having elders homelessness. There was a huge article, and they are seeing more and more in the greater Boston area where elders are not able to manage, and that is because of a lot of scams and everything. They are losing their financials and they are not able to take care of themselves. So very, very important as a society, as a community, we need to really think about it, how we can have families next to each other, be able to take care of each other. The elders can take care of the grandchildren. I mean, this is the culture I come from. My in-laws have been living with me for 30 years and they helped me raise my kids. And it was the best thing you can have. They were living in my house. And for us, like being a culture, it's okay for us to have in-laws in the house. In the mainstream culture, it might not be. So having two separate units might be a best thing for all the families.
Sorry, Liz, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No, I'm just agreeing that it would be a huge benefit, I think, to many families in town.
Yeah.
It is fascinating to me that we're kind of in a conversation about what our communities and our families should look like and who should be able to live here. Yeah. I think what would you say, Mike, to someone who feels concerned about the changing nature of a community? Because honestly, something that makes Burlington so wonderful is that we are a community of people who care about each other, and there are so many families that have been here forever and care about this town.
Right. I think it's a tough sell, not just in Burlington, but anywhere in the country, I would say. People resist change.
Yes.
And I think maybe one of the easiest things I think we could do is address the accessory dwelling unit issue. I think that would be one of the first and easiest steps that we could take. Because right now we have some sort of a bylaw that's somewhat archaic as to who and who cannot have an accessory unit or an in-law apartment. We need to tweak our bylaws to make that a little bit more allowable here in town. I think that's a good first step.
Say more about that. What's the situation as it is now, and what's not ideal about it?
So it's very strange. I think that you can't have an accessory dwelling unit if your house was built after a certain date. It's like it doesn't make any sense. But again, it's like housing is the third rail, and anytime you want to change the zoning bylaw, you've needed 2/3 of town meeting to do it. And so it's a really high bar. The state has since changed that. So anytime you're dealing with a bylaw change that has to do with housing, we only need a majority vote of town meeting. But historically, that's why it's been so hard to get any type of changes in zoning and the zoning bylaw regarding these issues. It's been so hard to make these changes because there is that resistance.
Right. So one of the things that they touched on in the video that we just watched is the difference between capital A affordable housing and lowercase affordable housing. Liz, will you get into that a little bit?
Sure. So I always mix them up, but basically the idea is there's affordable housing that is kind of on state affordable housing. So the State Department of Housing and Urban Development has
capital A.
That's capital A.
I got you.
So that's officially affordable. It's on the list of affordable units in town. It's not necessarily Section 8. It's not necessarily, people making $90,000 because this area is so expensive. It's based on the area median income, and people earning $90,000 are eligible for affordable housing in this area. So when we think affordable, we're really talking middle class. We're talking about firefighters, professionals, people working in town hall. We're talking about, it's not, it would be really difficult for somebody working a minimum wage job to get affordable housing in this town.
I mean, that's where we get this number from the report, Rita, that I think it's 2,250 affordable units that we're missing. And that's just your regular $90,000 income.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot of housing that we need, Rita.
Yep, exactly. I agree. And even one of the new building that just built up at Lifetime Fitness, the affordable rent for that one is like $2,700. I mean, who can afford $2,700 rent as affordable? You need to make at least $120,000 to do that, and it is just impossible. I mean, I talked to many family seniors who are hoping to get into affordable unit. As soon as they saw the number, they're like, I can't afford that. My social security is $2,000. I can't afford $2,700. Yeah. So this is something as a town we really need to think about it. What is affordable? What is something that people can afford? And I know there's a lot of corporations are out there who really understand there is a huge need and they're making money by building these wonderful buildings. That's great. But as a town, we really need to look at it and we need to take some action. There's a lot of state and federal funding available, and we need to create some kind of trust or housing organization like Arlington has Housing Corporation of Arlington. We need to create something that can build affordable housing with these grants from the federal and state, because I think that is very much needed. Right, Mike?
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. Because because something that I don't know, being we are the best town in the whole state. I tell everybody Burlington is the best town. I've been here 40 years and I have brought my whole family here. I have 70 members of family in town, and it's amazing. It's really amazing town, and I really want it to make it a happier place for everybody who wants to live in this town.
Yeah.
It is mind-boggling, Liz, that number 2,250. When we think about the hours of meetings and permitting and site plans that happen for, a 6-unit development or even a 20-unit development that maybe has 6 affordable units in it. Is it overwhelming to think about the size of the need? Is it inspiring? I mean, how do you...
So from a planning perspective, housing planners, I tip my hat to them. It is a full-time job. It's a constant uphill battle. It's really hard. You get a lot of pushback from the community. There's so many misconceptions about what it actually means. And again, change is hard. Housing is really hard. I think that, again, kind of echoing what Mike was saying, I think the whole town as a whole needs to, and the government, select board, planning board, town administration really needs to be taking this a little bit more seriously and thinking about it more holistically. I know that you touched on a question before, but capital A versus lowercase a. So we got capital A, which is, on the state list of affordable housing units that has to meet certain criteria, which is fine. The lowercase a, affordable housing, is actually market-driven affordable housing. So it's housing that's older housing stock that just can't, that doesn't, you can't ask the same kind of rent on an older housing stock with maybe kind of older cabinetry, older fixtures, still perfectly good, safe housing in a desirable area, but it's not going to get the same kind of rent as a new building. And
listen, it works for me. That's all I need. If the window's open, if there's a door, I'm in.
Right. But that's again about the housing life cycle that we talk about. So we talk about people and their housing life cycle, where you live with your parents, go to college, rent, get a house, kids leave, retire, downsize. That's all at a standstill. But market-driven affordable housing means that, it might not be affordable, but it's market-driven affordable. So it might not be, rents upwards of, like, we have rents in town that are $4,000 or going to be $4,000. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, again, the 27 that that's an affordable, that's a lower rent in town. And so that's gonna fill the need somewhere. So it's, building new housing, kind of the older housing stock will be added to that kind of lowercase a affordable. It kind of creates its own life cycle.
Yes. And
yes,
on top of that, one of the stats from this report was condos, often an affordable housing option in that sort of like naturally affordable housing. In Burlington, condos cost about $586,000 if you want to buy one, which is that's not affordable for your average person.
No, and I think the condo market, is very, it's a specific thing that's kind of different. The reason it's so high is because we don't have many, and specifically single level condos. Single level living, meaning if you wanted to downsize as a senior and not deal with stairs and not have to mow the lawn, you're competing with a lot of people who want to do the same thing. So the market goes up for the price of those condos because there's so few of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's something whenever we have developers come in, we say, we want single level living, we want and they say, oh, but elevators cost too much. And so it's also that. The other thing about condos, and I don't know as much about it, I don't know, Mike, if you do, but a lot of developers don't want to build condos because for some financial reason where apartments are more financially beneficial to the developer. What's the kind of...
It's cheaper to go up than it is to spread it out across.
Correct, of course.
The certain acreage there. So,
but even if it's cheaper to go up, if we build a condo that goes up, it's fine. And I did talk to a couple of developers, but they don't want to build condos. And the reason they told me was liability. They said, if we have 56 units, because I am in process of trying to see if I can build a 56 unit affordable housing, not in Burlington, but in Woburn. So I talked to some of the developers and they said, if it's apartment building, we'll jump on it. But for condos, we won't do it. And I was like, why? And these are some of the popular builders. They're like, no, there's so much liability that goes there.
Are we at the mercy of developers for what's buildable financially, what's most financially beneficial to them?
They've got the deep pockets. The town doesn't have the kind of money it would take to construct something like that. I think the best scenario would be if we did, say we did have a parcel that was suitable for some housing, if we could get into some sort of a public-private partnership.
Yeah.
A good example of that is the land swap there. We created some 72 units roughly between Grandview and the units down on Wall Street, you know.
Yep.
So that was a good example. If we could do more of that,
That'd be
we'd
great.
we'd be much better off.
The other option that, you know, I think that Burlington hasn't done, but I've seen done in other communities, is, you know, if a community is serious, if they have a piece of property, if the town has a piece of property that they can, you know, sell to a nonprofit developer for, you know, $1 or whatever. Nonprofit developers are those that will build affordable housing and will provide a lot of these things that we're talking about. But you know, it's again, you know, select board and town meeting, and do we have property to do that with? Not really. We're pretty built out, and you know, if we were to, you know, buy a piece of property to then do that with, it'd be very expensive. You know, a single family home, if you're going to tear it down, just the land is $500,000 here, so it's not.
I don't know if this is a fruitful line of conversation to go down, but we did just have a conversation at town meeting about the Carpenter House, which is town-owned land that has a single-family house on it that's being demolished. I don't know if that would be a prime spot for affordable housing. I don't know.
I don't know how big it is. I don't know. You probably know more than I do.
Yeah,
Mike.
it's probably a buildable lot. The town took that.
Okay.
Well, we didn't take it. We purchased it from the Carpenter family,
Right.
thinking that we needed some additional parking behind Town Hall. Turns out we haven't. It was being rented for several years to a family at a very substantial discount for a number of years. Yep. But it's a very old house. It's fallen into disrepair, and now we've got to decide what we're going to do with it.
It's gone from naturally affordable housing to maybe a little unlivable housing.
Yeah, it's also it's not a standard lot. It's a tiny lot. You maybe could do a 3-unit, but
the topography is tough.
The topography is very tough. You would have to keep like the same footprint and then just go. It's tough. It's tough. Yeah.
I think we've got better.
There's better options out there. There's better options. I agree.
How about
cross that one off.
There was a land near the Hilton Hotel. I think wasn't there some land open
by the Hilton Hotel?
Was there some land open that somebody wanted to sell, like 13 acres or something?
I'm not sure. I know the Housing Authority has roughly 18 acres off of Middlesex Turnpike in Adams Street area.
Yep, behind.
They've had that since Route 3 was
dead ended.
Dead ended there.
Yep.
It's suitable, and it's just been sitting there for decades. You know, I don't know what it would take to, you know, get them to do
Maybe
something
clean.
up there,
Yeah.
but it's a substantial
That's true.
site. It has some topography issues itself,
Yeah.
but it's 18 acres, and
There's a lot of
it has
So
some
there
potential.
are options for creative thinking, potentially, to get us towards that additional 2,250
units.
number. Yeah.
If we even can go halfway there, 50%, I think in next 3 to 5 years, I think it'd be wonderful.
So one of the things that really struck me in the report is one of the ways that we would know if we're really hitting a crisis point. One of those telling statistics is if we start to see people of color leaving town, if we start to see our community demographics shift. Because right now, I'm going to cite some statistics from the report. About 30% of Burlington residents are people of color, but the number of people who own homes is really racially unequal, and the cost burden is pretty unequal as well. So the report found that 79% of white residents in town own their homes, while 60% of Asian residents, 31% of Hispanic residents, and 23% of Black residents own their homes. And that speaks to some of those disparities. It speaks to what we need to be watching for potentially as we see whether or not we're doing a good job. Am I understanding that right, Liz, from that report?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it just it shows that, you know, we have a lot to work on. I think one of the other points that the report tried to make is that Burlington, what makes Burlington like a wonderful place is its diversity. We're a lot more diverse than some of our neighboring towns, and it brings a lot of different cultural elements, and it just makes it a more interesting place to be. And so, that the idea that, we want more housing because we want to make sure that we keep our character, and, our diverse character is an important thing that we should be thinking about.
Yeah, Rita, the report, residents who were quoted in the report spoke pretty passionately. There were some really, really powerful quotes and statistics about the value of residents saying the value of diversity in Burlington. What does that impel us to do to make sure that we're maintaining this thing that the community says is important?
As Liz said, I think it is very, very important that we do have these either accessory dwelling unit or some kind of thing done as soon as possible, because all of these immigrant or diverse culture, usually family stays together. And if we can make that happen, then we know that we will be able to keep them, because we see that, and this is really makes sense, like grandchildren needs to be taken care of, our grandparents are there, the sandwich generations are working, husband wife both are working. So it is really important that we do this accessory dwelling unit as soon as possible. Bylaws, we need to get everybody on the board, our town meeting members, our selectmen, our town administration. How can we make this happen? Let's do that. That's the easiest thing to do, to get that bylaw done, because as Liz said, the state has changed the laws. Majority voters, we can get that bylaws changed, and then we can look at these other option of 18 acres that we have. As a town, we need to come together and work on it, because this will help us create the wonderful community and create the resources for our community.
Yeah. Speaking of accessory dwelling units, pretty recently at their latest town meeting, Bedford has allowed accessory dwelling units in all of their single family homes.
That's wonderful. See, so our next door towns are doing it. We need to move it as soon as possible.
Why haven't we?
Again, I think housing is the third rail. It's really hard. It's something we actually talked about in the master plan steering committee, about, and the steering committee had developers, town meeting members, people from all boards and commissions. We had select board members on there. It was a really great, diverse committee, and people, there are kind of two sides to it. Again, the idea, we want accessory dwelling units. It's really wonderful to do that. I would want it on my house. I think it would be great for my parents. The other side of the coin, people saying, well, what if they aren't maintained? But I mean, you could say that about any house. So it's kind of that. Again, change is scary. Change is hard. I think
It is. I can imagine someone watching this, listening to this, and feeling frustrated that we know how big of a problem we is. We know how crucial it is. And yet, Mike, the report came out in December. Has it moved the needle? Or not, excuse me, not December. It came out late last year.
It came out last year, and the only needle that has moved are the prices of homes and rents.
Right. And
Okay, so
not
that data is already old.
Yeah,
From
it
just-
is.
It is.
Right.
That's
Oh
what I
my
was going to
gosh.
say.
18 months ago.
Yep.
And
So those numbers are really changed or increased by 20 to 30%.
Yep.
I have really seen. So
Yeah.
from the report, it is really. And I think one thing, the accessory dwelling unit, it can be good for parents as well as children. A lot of
Oh my
the
God.
new graduates who are coming out, they would love to have pay small rent and maintain the property and all that and take care of the parents. And then they can maybe afford to buy their own, they can save up the money. So it's both generation. We are, as a community, we are helping not our elders, but taking care of our, the new graduates and the beginning career people. So we really seriously need to do something about it.
agreed, yeah.
Call your town meeting member.
Yeah,
that's
that's a great idea.
Join town meeting. We have openings on town meeting. It's 3 times a year.
Manageable.
Manageable. And, call your town meeting member. Join town meeting. Get more involved if you're concerned. Make your voice heard, because, It's important.
I want to ask each of you, we touched on this in the beginning, what the value is of having this report. But I want to get a little more granular than that and ask more specifically, how do you integrate this kind of data into the work that you're doing, Mike?
Well, we felt this was the first step that we needed to take. Let's identify where our shortcomings are. And the next step, and we're hoping to work, planning board's working right now on developing a housing a production plan under the new housing choice legislation. So Housing Partnership Committee also wanted to take that next step and create a housing production plan now that we have the needs assessment. So that would be the next thing. And that would, and what that would do is we would, would help us maybe identify certain sites in town that might be suitable for housing, or maybe there's some underutilized parcels in town that we might be keeping our eye on. And again, working with Liz and the planning board to help complete the state mandated housing choice requirements.
Are we doing that? Are we on the road to creating a housing production plan?
Liz, I would say yes. It actually made
so a housing. So I think that there's a couple of steps that need to happen on that. So I know that there's been talk of a housing production plan. I think from my perspective, one of the things that we don't really have officially is we don't have a housing trust fund. So we don't have money that can be readily used to go towards, housing. And
can you describe how that would work a little more?
Sure. So a housing trust fund is, I think it's a state program where you have to kind of get a board together and get it through town meeting to start this housing trust fund and have a plan for it. So that instead of right now, if we want to, the town has affordable units that they manage. If the town wants to do anything with that, they have to go to town meeting to get money for it officially, because town money holds the purse strings, right? Mm-hmm. But the housing market doesn't work on a 3 town meeting cycle. No. That's not how it works. No. So the trust fund will make it so that those in the know, those that care about housing in town, can be on a committee to really be able to use that money in a really impactful way. I think that once the trust fund gets implemented, I would love to see that housing production plan really take off. Where is there land? Are there nonprofit developers that we can work with that other towns have used? Where do we go from here? So that's kind of one side of the coin that I think about. The other side is that the state recently has passed, the Baker administration in 2021 passed housing legislation called MBTA communities. Yeah. And for those of you that don't know, basically all of the towns that are serviced by the MBTA, so that's commuter rail, subway, and bus service, are required to have an area of town, a zoning district that allows multifamily housing by right. So that means that it doesn't need to get a special permit. It doesn't need to go to town meeting. It needs site plan review through the planning board to make sure that the building meets all of our dimensional and zoning requirements. And then it has safe circulation and all that stuff that the planning board looks at. So as a town, by 2024, we need to have, not by 2025, I'm sorry, by 2025, we need to have that zoning district in place. It needs to be 50 acres. 25 of those acres need to be contiguous. And the zoning needs to allow for 15 units per acre.
It's not a ton. I think there's been a lot of hand-wringing, maybe one might even say panic, about this law. So assuage some of those fears.
it's everywhere, all over the region, everybody's in the same boat. We're all in the same boat, and so it's something that I like to think of as a regional thing. I think one of the reasons the state did this is because it's so unaffordable here that people are leaving, and talent is leaving.
It's a brain drain, Mike was talking about.
It's a huge brain drain, and the state government is really worried about it. And, you know, cities and towns are in charge of their own zoning, but what the state has found is that NIMBYism still remains an issue, and that no matter what we, you know, the 40B was you know, trying to work on that, but it's still, most communities don't have, you know, multifamily by right. And so the state said, well, you know, this has been going on for so long. The housing life cycle is at a standstill. People are leaving. People can work remotely. We need to do something about this.
So, okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, because this is wonkier than I
Feel like
I'm
I
capable
know.
of.
Yes.
But so, okay, couple of clarifications.
Yes,
One
absolutely.
is, just because we create the district doesn't mean we automatically get the housing.
Correct. It's again, it's a it's a free market. We live in a capitalistic society. It's you know, the state is saying let the free market do what it does. NIMBY, stopping the free market. Let the free market do what it does, right?
But so the other clarification is the creation of that district. The idea of it is that once it's created, we no longer have to go to town meeting necessarily for every little thing, but we do, and correct me if I'm wrong again, we have to go to town meeting for that first, for the creation of that zone.
Yes, so town meeting does need to approve that zone in order for us to meet the criteria. It's a law, so it's not just the state is encouraging it. The state, you know, has said this is the new law of the land. They, you know, if we don't adhere to it, we're going to lose out on a lot of grant funding. And those communities that haven't begun the process and haven't, you know, shown work towards it have lost money for their like affordable, like senior housing, because it's all tied in. And so, you know, we lose out on a lot of grant money. That being said, you know, we are coming up with a plan. We do have, we are working with a consultant to look at different areas. I do want to kind of just say that Burlington is above the 10% affordable for 40B. The town has done a ton of work and has approved a ton of multifamily housing, which we shouldn't, you know, we need to remember that, and credit should be given where it's due. This town has been much more progressive than a lot of surrounding communities on this issue. So I think that some of that overlay should be on existing multifamily, and then the rest of that zoning overlay, you know, the by right zoning, should be in other areas of town where we think, you know, redevelopment is needed, and that can, you know, support it, and that, you know, we want to create more community. You know, we're working with Melissa Chantalkas in economic development to look at the Mall Road Middlesex Turnpike corridor. There's no housing there. People go during the day and leave at night, and all those restaurants, you know, pack up. So having people there to keep it kind of a more 24/7 area, to keep that economy rolling when remote work is the way of the world now, I think was something to consider.
I was talking to Town Administrator Paul Sagarino yesterday, actually, as of this taping, about that those meetings, those visioning meetings around Mall Road. And one of the things that he was relaying from those meetings is that there is an interest, a genuine interest in community members and having more mixed use in those areas. So that's promising, Mike. Rita, there is credit where credit is due, and also, I want to give you a megaphone. I want to give you the opportunity to grab any sort of reluctant town meeting members, any of those folks who are listening to this and they're like, I'm not sure. Grab them by the shoulders, tell them why it matters.
It matters because if your kids can't afford to stay in the town where they have grown up, they have gone to school, they might be working, as well as you have aging parents, if you can't take care of them, then it is something that I feel like as a human being, as a son, daughter, or parents, you are not doing your job. So I think we all are connected. We all are together. We are one big family, one big community, and whatever we can do to help each other out. Always listen to other side. I'm always open to listening why there should not be all these housing in the town. But as far as what we all can see, the more housing, more brain, more talent in our town would make our town better for all of us. So I would love to just sit down with, if anybody has any questions, sit down and talk and interact and find out what is the reasoning why we are not able to pass this law and get this done as soon as possible.
I'm gonna bring us to a close. I'm gonna gently land this plane with a final question
Sure.
for all three of you. And I want you to be as granular as you can in these. I think it's really tempting to stay at that 10,000 foot level, but I want to try and get granular. What does it look like in 30 years? What does Burlington feel like in 30 years if we do this right? Mike, let's start with you.
Well, I've been in Burlington for 65 years, and what I like about Burlington is the neighborhood I grew up in 65 years ago. If I go back there today, it looks remarkably the same. I know, yes, there's been a few McMansionizations going on in certain neighborhoods, but for the most part, most of these neighborhoods are still intact. And I would like to think that we can maintain that. But we have to change some minds, Sydney. We went to town meeting a few years ago and tried to get a municipal affordable housing trust thing going. We were soundly defeated at town meeting. I think there's a lot of mistrust amongst folks in Burlington. The Rogers Piano site recently went to town meeting. It was a for sale development of maybe how many units, 80, 90 units or something like that. It was significantly scaled down from the original plan. But again, it was just soundly defeated. And so we can't seem to get any traction. And that's what I think we need to do is try and sound the trumpets and have programs like you're doing here today. Try to convince people that we really need to address this, actually really truly for the future of Burlington and our economic stability.
But you're saying in 30 years, if we do it right, we can still have that feeling of community that
I think
people
we
love.
can. If we're talking about this middle housing, these smaller type of development, maybe a two-family home here or there, blended in with the surrounding neighborhoods. It's not going to be a game changer. It's not going to decrease the value of anybody's home. Trust me. I have about 110 units of assisted living right behind me. I've got a two-family next door, and I got a two-family across the street from me. Hasn't affected my value of my house at all. My house is worth just as much today, more so. So we got to get. I think it's important that we try and change some people's mind that this is it's not doom and gloom, and it's not gonna, decrease your property values or the integrity of your neighborhood by any means. If we do this in a blended fashion.
Okay. Rita, what's your vision if we do it right in 30 years? What does it look like?
If we do it right, I can really see this town keeping what it is as well as adding on more values, because I can really see in 30 years, I would like to be living in Burlington in one of the senior housing where there is services are available and my family is close by if I need them, and be able to continue doing my community service, helping my neighborhood, and doing what I enjoy doing. So I think it is very, very important for all of us to work together. In 30 years, we can still keep the same small community feel, but at the same time provide all the resources for our community as a one big family.
Liz?
Sure. So speaking of 30 years, so we completed our master plan, and one of the main recommendations that the steering committee kind of finalized with that was that we need to maintain our strong single family neighborhoods and our strong kind of community and neighborhoods while strengthening the town. And so we talk about a lot of these adding more housing. I think we can do it in they actually call it, doing ADUs, they call it gentle housing, where it's like adding more housing units but gently, so that it's not really going to make a big difference. You're not really going to notice it. The other thing is, when we're talking about MBTA communities, I'm not talking about putting it in the established single-family neighborhoods. I'm talking about putting it in areas to kind of enliven existing kind of commercial districts. I think about Marlboro Middlesex Turnpike. I think about allowing people to walk places, outdoor cafes, art centers. I think about kind of places we like. We think about, Davis Square is really fun. We think about areas in Boston where you want to walk down the street and you sit by a cafe and you go grab your dry cleaning and it's all in one area, and you don't really need to, you can have your car there, but you don't need to, you don't need to get in your car to go from Leahy out Mall Road, down the road to go back in. It's all contained, and that's my vision is to keep Burlington the way it is in single family neighborhoods, but kind of bring some enliven Mall Road, Middlesex Turnpike.
I think we'll leave it there. Liz Bonventre, Rita Shah, Mike Runyan, thank you so much for joining me.
Sure, my pleasure.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you
I really
so
appreciate
much.
your time.
This has been BNEWS In Depth, and I'm your host, Sydney Boles. And I was speaking with Burlington Planning Director Liz Bonventre, Select Board Chair Mike Runyan, and FISCO founder Rita Shah. Thanks for following along, and I'll see you next time on BNEWS In Depth.